much for being here. Vitality session, second session. We just heard, honestly, I was like a really important panel. And Shelly and I I was just saying to her, I'm like, I don't know how you did that, because that was like three geniuses in a row. But they were just really talking about the future of healthcare, what we need to do, how we disrupt it at a systems level. And you kind of get why they created this space, and honestly why they're some of the leaders in the space. I want to introduce Amy Dittmer from Rice, the provost. I will tell you, Rice not only is thinking at that level, but they are driving system change in ways that's remarkable. So we're so happy to have you here in Davos and thrilled to have you moderate this panel.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I'm not moderating. Just quick, yes. I will be introducing the moderator, but really just trying to kind of frame this panel. So, as you know, it's built for speed, rethinking the global research university. And as he said, I'm Amy Dittmer. I'm the provost. I'm executive vice president, and I'm an economist by training. And so today we're going to explore how the academic and the private sector leaders can work together to accelerate the innovation from lab into market. And I think we got some good ideas at the last session, so it got me thinking. And oftentimes in these sessions at Davos, you'll hear people talk about breakthrough ideas. But what we talk about a little bit less is what happens after the breakthrough. How do you get the breakthrough into the hands of the people, perhaps the clinicians, perhaps the people of practice in industry, in order to be able to make that change the world in the way that we hope it will. And so what is scarce sometimes is the speed, especially in academics. How do we move faster, and how do we get things into the hands of those that need it? And the stakes are high. Without proper support, university innovations will lag. They won't go anywhere, and they will not necessarily have the change we want. So Rice is hosting, not because universities are experts at making this happen, but because we've had some, I think, unique examples of how we can start to draw a blueprint to shorten that time. And this panel is going to hopefully talk to us a little bit about what works and what doesn't. I'm just going to give you two really quick examples, and they may come up later when Adrian, who's from Rice, talks again. But they're potential, or at least we believe they're potential blueprints for helping this happen. The first is our Biotech Launchpad. It's a Houston-based accelerator that fast-tracks health and medical technology and deliveries into cures. It brings together the scientists and the researchers with industry executives and funding agents. And perhaps just as importantly, it has a sister organization that sits outside of Rice, RBL LLC, that actually takes those inventions and turns them into companies and does the work in order to be able to get it into development. So that would be example potentially one. Another, in a very different way, is Nest 360. Nest 360 it stands for Newborn Essential Solutions and Technology. It is an international alliance of 22 leading institutions, including Rice 360 Global Health Technologies. And this is devoted to reducing the deaths of small and premature and newborn babies in sub-Saharan Africa. It has been working with 22 different institutions and 4 nations in Africa in order to get low-cost materials and technology into the hands of the hospitals that are working with them. And it has saved each year, 100,000 babies a year. And they're expanding that both into other countries in Africa, as well as to thinking about rural communities in the United States. We are quite fortunate to have funding from 6 different philanthropies, including the Gates Foundation. The earlier example I talked about with the Rice 360 is federally funded. So you can see the funding matters, how you de-risk this through the funding, and how do you escalate the pace. So this session is meant to be practical. This session is meant to figure out how do we roll up our sleeves and get this done. We're going to talk about what works. We're going to talk about what doesn't work. So Chatham House rules. Everyone, what's in the room, what's in the circle room stays within the circle room. And we really do want these concrete examples. We have wonderful, wonderful guests here today talking about from areas of advanced computing, global health, medical technology, philanthropy, and the university itself. And each are seeing different bottlenecks, each are seeing different challenges, and each knows where we need to speed up and where we need to stay maybe slow to get the discoveries. We are also incredibly fortunate to have Matthew Bishop here with us today. He'll be moderating. He brings an incredibly deep understanding of how do you move this forward? How do institutions move this forward? And his experience draws from that from a vast number of years at The Economist, most recently as the U.S. business editor. And right now he is a fellow at the Marshall Institute, LSE, London School of Economics. So thank you. I love to see the full room. We're all excited about making change happen. And I will turn it over to the experts.
Thanks, Amy. And thanks for Rice for hosting this and putting this panel together. And I love this space. It's really a good addition to Davos, I think, and feels very intimate and a good place to have off-the-record conversations like this. And thanks also to JR and Handshake, who have done such a great job over the years of bridging this gap between the corporate sector, the philanthropic sector, and academia and public sector. It's really lovely to see it bearing fruit in this way. The gist of this panel is really about how do we get what's going on in the areas where pure research is happening into products and services that are in the market making a difference. I think the most tweeted thing I ever said was at an Economist Innovation Summit a decade and a half ago, which is that the pace of change is never again going to be as slow as it is today. And I think that we're about how much faster is it going to be and how much faster can we get stuff out of the academy and into the real world. Not that the academic world isn't a real world, but to talk about this, we have a great panel. We have at the far end Niranjan Bose, who works with Gates Ventures in this area. Next to him is Adrian, who's Chief Innovation Officer at Rice, which is a new role for universities, I think, in some ways. It's one that seems really welcome. We have Sheka, who is at Siemens Healthineers. And we have Elisa, who's with NVIDIA doing quantum computing. And I want to start with you because quantum seems to be one of those areas that has always been in the research area, and we keep wondering when's it actually going to come to market. And I heard the CEO of Verizon speaking this morning. He said, next 5 years, it's going to be here. It's going to change everything. It's going to 1,000x everything that's going on already with AI and so forth. Is that really going to happen? Is this going to come out? And what are the main things that have to happen to get it out quickly?
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. Very nice to meet you. Great question. I would love to dig into that. Quantum computing is for sure going to mature quite substantially in the next 5 years, but it will be always in tandem and it will work together with classical computing. The future of computing will be a quantum accelerated supercomputer. So currently we have accelerated supercomputers right there, the backbone of the AI revolution, and there will be a small system next to them that will be an accelerator to that, and that will be the quantum computer. Indeed, the speed up with which innovation is happening in quantum computing is also accelerating, and it's very much exponential. I've been working in quantum computing first in industry, because this is where in academia, because this is where quantum computing started from. And everyone was in academia, and now we have these big corporations and a lot of startups. Of course, still academia is very active in that space and also very crucial. And there is a very big progress from where it started as pure academic exercise to now the next computing revolution. And NVIDIA also believes that quantum will be the next computing revolution. We are just not building the actual quantum computers. We left that to the people in academia, in other big corporations, but we are building kind of everything around it and all of the classical compute infrastructure that is needed for quantum computing.
So as you reflect on that, from having been an academic and now being at NVIDIA, what are the lessons you draw about how we get this process of technology coming out of the research area into the real world to happen faster and more effectively?
Yeah. This also changes pretty much every year or every second year. I think what is very important, and we still see that there are some developments in academia, and still in particular when it comes to the hardware development, we still have the best groups and the best technology in the world is created in academia. And this was also kind of demonstrated by the recent acquisition by Google Quantum AI of academics spin-out from MIT called Atlantic Quantum. So there is still so much deep tech developed in academia that it is getting absorbed. And the best way to do that is indeed, I think, through startups. We at NVIDIA, and I'm sure all of the rest of the industries, we work a lot with students, we work with the universities, we organize a lot of hackathons, we try to engage as best as we can, provide also compute infrastructure, but ultimately when we want to do this kind of IP transfer, the fastest way to do that is through an acquisition of a startup.
And do you find universities are now developing more startups as a way to do that? Yeah.
At least in quantum computing, for sure, yes. There is a boom of startups.
So Shika, there's the same question to you, really. What are you seeing in terms of what's working and what could be done better in terms of getting the deep research out of the academic world into the marketplace?
Yeah. First of all, thank you. I'm really happy to be here with all of you. I think I come from a very different, so she's tech, I think I'm med tech, and sometimes when we talk about innovation, I have to contextualize it. Our innovation life cycles and our product life cycles, sometimes they're 10 years, 20 years, and once we bring a product to market, that's expected to stay for 40, 50 years. Now, when you now calibrate this rate of change that you talked about, right, we are really now figuring out how to do this, how to keep our products, first of all, how to anticipate needs that are still relevant 50 years later, and how to also then design products in a way that they can stay that course and also create real impact. And for us, our internal, I think, innovation ecosystem within the company is pretty strong. I think we've invested in it for over many, many years. Part of that is also then working with universities, because the academia really offers exactly this kind of hub where new ideas can be born, but there's also sort of ability to forget what's happening outside the world and to really design and to really do breakthroughs. So we do a lot together with academia. I think where it's more and more, I think, important these days, and this is for both us as companies, but also our partners in academia, is how do we calibrate this rate of change externally? How do we really design for the changing needs? And we are in healthcare, so we are talking about patients. We're talking about healthcare professionals. How do we really absorb these needs? How do we bring back what our customers want? How technology today impacts us, but impacts also our customers and patients. In healthcare, for example, I mean, I guess, I don't know how many of you have Googled your own symptoms at one point. Yeah? And today, I think the first, some symptom comes up, even I'm in healthcare, but my first instinct is to go to ChatGPT. I have this problem. So I think we are also seeing a very well-equipped, set of patients who really want to have a say in their own diagnosis, but also have a say in their own care pathways. We see customers today, and that's basically healthcare professionals, doctors. They are expecting to really now have AI come into their workplace, but really alleviate the burden that they have today. They want to get rid of all the administrative tasks as much as possible. And I think this is then the challenge probably for us as a company and also our academic partners. How do we bring these insights early on? And the one way that we definitely do is we really look to partnerships, and this is then partnership with the university, but also partnership with even hospitals. And then we are co-creating outcomes, right? And we really test this. So it's really about designing for a partnership that really allows us to continuously exchange and work together to really bring in insights as early as possible and then co-create. And maybe this is where in the past we would be totally okay with our engineers and R&D, being, let's say they are holed up and for 10 years they're developing something and they bring this to market and they expect we will succeed. We're a big company, we know our technology. I think those days are long gone. We really reflect and we understand we have to test as early as possible and then have this exchange going and build this into an innovation life cycle that really future-proofs us. Great.
I'll jump over you, Adrian, and go to you, Niranjan, Bose first, to talk about to explain a bit about the Gates Ventures model, but also how you're trying to accelerate stuff from research into the market.
Yeah, again, thank you. Thanks for having me here. At Gate, so Gates Ventures, even though we have the name Ventures in our title, we're not a venture capital firm. We're largely a private office, and think of us as a philanthropy in many ways that complements some of the investing that happens, as well as the work that the Gates Foundation does. And when we look at the innovation lens from philanthropy perspective, I would define it as the purpose of philanthropy and innovation is catalytic high-risk capital. And catalytic high-risk capital in two contexts. One, when you don't have the data, generate the data. You may fail, but that's okay. That's what the high-risk capital is for. The second, when the commercial market doesn't exist, that's also where you need to de-risk and move the needle. I think this is how we view it from a philanthropic lens. If you take our program in Alzheimer's disease, you'll see the playbook replicated.
And what are there specific things that, as you look at the landscape of research that's out there, how do you figure out where to put your money to work?
I'll give you one example. 8-9 years ago, the question we were trying to ask is, why isn't there a blood test for Alzheimer's disease? Why do we need a lumbar puncture or a PET imaging? And the short answer from venture capital companies and diagnostic players was there is no market for a standalone blood-based test for Alzheimer's. And that was true 8 years ago, 9 years ago, because you didn't have a treatment. You didn't have a viable path for reimbursement. But I think that's where philanthropy stepped in, created a fund, created a mechanism to invest in companies that moved the product forward. Ultimately, it's the commercial players who had to bring the test to market. It's the Siemens of the world, it's the Roches of the world, it's the Fujirebus of the world that are going to bring the test. But you need the academic innovation to keep pushing that product to that line where they pick it up and take it to the finish line. And that's the role we played.
Great. Adrian, I mean, you've taken on this fascinating role at Rice. You've come from a startup world where you've been involved in the launch of two successful startups, I think. What drew you to this job, and what have you found you're spending your time doing to try and accelerate the research knowledge coming out into the marketplace?
So there were two different questions there. What have I found, and what are we doing? And what I've really found is that academia is in a time of sea change. The Office of Innovation is coming on its 4th anniversary right now. It was created in 2022. It was really an intentional investment into saying that society now expects research universities to maximize their impact beyond publication by ensuring that the research that we do actually reaches the market. And that means that measuring things beyond the patents that we do to measuring the actual market validation. And that means in the clinical space, seeing how many patients have been treated with this. In the energy space, how many gigawatts have been generated, how many kilotons in a chemical process have been created. And really saying, okay, what can academia do to de-risk that process? And so that's really some of the changes that I'm seeing, and some of the things that honestly surprised me from when I left academia now pushing 10, 15 years ago. Of seeing that change in attitude to say, hey, academia was historically built to generate new knowledge. We're, as an institution, told minimize the false positives so that we can push out research. Now the expectation of society has changed and saying, do that and maximize the impact of the work that you do.
So I wanted to sort of look initially at this question of, how you with NVIDIA, you said you've got to buy knowledge, you buy a team out of academia. What led you to do that as opposed to develop your own team or build more in-house capacity yourself to do? We have the history of organizations like Bell Labs or Xerox PARC where you had companies that really said academia is never really going to deliver let's create our own more commercially minded deep research. So what's changing there?
So we are also building in-house. The ones that bought was Google AI and Google Quantum AI.
Yeah.
In terms of us, we are building in-house, but we are very much focused really on the space where NVIDIA is already an expert in, which is AI. And we are kind of building all the tools and the platform towards the hybrid computing future, where you would program quantum computers next to classical computers, and you would need kind of a unified hybrid architecture. So we are very much developing in that space our in-house team. We have a product that is getting adopted by the community, by academia as well, very much. Why we didn't decide to actually build a quantum computer, like the actual hardware, was, I think, an excellent decision. And the answer to that lays very much in the strategy, in the core strategy of NVIDIA, which is to be the tide that lifts all boats. And by not having our own QPU, we are actually very agnostic and we can work with absolutely everyone in the community. We are very proud that we don't have a competition, and we are still a quantum computing also company. And we work with all of the QPU builders, with all of the software providers, with all of the national labs in the US, where I'm based as well, also, of course, with academia to a big extent. So we want to be really neutral, to work with everyone. And also in academia, the groups that are building on that technology are 20, 30 years old. So even if you have a very deep pocket, there is kind of quite a long ramp-up time to develop the R&D on the hardware side.
And what do you find the biggest challenge that you have to overcome in doing that kind of collaboration?
For us, the biggest challenge is really kind of the bandwidth on our side. We are still not a very large team. As a whole, NVIDIA is, in terms of people, is not so large company. We are about 35,000 people globally. So we are a very lean team. And for us, it's really challenging to be able to support and to engage with all of the institutions out there in a deep sense. So we are very much working towards that. But we are out there. If you are in our space or in whatever industry you are probably collaborating with teams from NVIDIA. And this is just coming from our strategy to be the tide that lifts all boats.
Mashika, I mean, you talked about the more of this curating collaboration role that you're playing. I mean, what have you seen that's really started to work, and what are you still wrestling with that doesn't seem to be working so well?
So, you know, we have a saying, and my CEO has that saying. So we are a medtech company, and he constantly says, medtech is global, but healthcare is local. Yeah? And I think speaking about collaborations, and I think this is really the insight that we have, that of course as a global medtech company, we can design for these large global solutions. But at the end, delivering that requires on-ground knowledge. And this you cannot bring as a company on your own. You really need to have partners. And I think the last years, this is definitely what has been quite successful for us. So we've realized you don't have a one-size-fits-all approach for all geographies. So for sure, you need to seek partnerships which are very diverse, but meeting the needs of those geographies. And there are some geographies, especially as a company looking to expand access to all patients all around the world. We see, for example, there are various challenges: geographic, infrastructure, financing. There is also workforce challenges, capacity, skill gaps that limit access to healthcare. And this is where then wherever we are deploying and looking to expand access, we really work with key partners, for sure academia, but it's also even foundations, NGOs. It's also then even government, because there's a lot of interest today that government has in expanding healthcare investment and to also build infrastructure. So this would be the successful part. What's still a challenge for us? So as a company and as this multinational company that has been existing for many years, I think our approach to innovation is shifting, and this is a very slow process even internally. So on the one hand, I think we've had great successes. For example, we are especially on the hardware side. We have teams, they are really experts, they get in, they really tackle problems, and then they're designing, developing, and building systems that they really know how to do that. And this used to take, it was a multi-year cycle. But I think the rate of change that especially digital and AI bring today requires us to relook and rewire our internal processes. So this definitely is something that takes a lot of time.
And what's been the thing you've had to rewire most?
So for sure, it is really connecting teams for this end-to-end life cycle, right? So starting from how do they understand the customer opportunity to how do you translate it into product definition, R&D, but then also then do that post-market. And alongside, we are in an industry that's very regulatory driven. So we have to also design for the long regulatory life cycles and for clinical evidence generation. So you have to have these compliance processes also getting faster as well. And at the same time, maybe another key topic, for example, is data. I think we've really seen that now we need to be able to democratize access to data even internally if we need to amplify our innovation efforts and then build solutions, again, build them globally, but then deploy them locally.
So, Naranja, conversations I've had with Bill over the years, I mean, he's a huge lover of intellectual property. And big believer in its catalytic role. As I've looked at universities over the years as a source of business ideas, their approach to IP and who owns it and whether they do as opposed to the academic has been a huge sort of pain point, I think. What are you seeing happening? Is that changing? Are universities starting to get it right more, or is it still a difficult area?
No, I think they are starting to get it right.
What does that look like?
Yeah, but it's slower than I think everyone wished it was moving at a pace. But I think it's also, what is the incentive system within academia? And when you're talking about peer-reviewed journals, articles for tenure-track positions, you're not putting weightage on IP, commercialization, and spin-outs. So how do you change that incentive system for academia? I think becomes the crux of the problem. And I think, Shikha, you spoke about data. I think provenance of data and how the data that was generated from an academic lab led to an innovation, if you can connect those dots and give credit to the place where that data came from, I think you may be able to push it faster.
Well, I suppose there used to be a sort of self-selection. You'd go into academia because you didn't want to go into the commercial world, and that's changed. I mean, I guess Silicon Valley in particular has changed that mindset a bit. I mean, I still don't know how far you feel that has to go.
I think that trend is heading in the right direction. And when I was in grad school, which is about 25 years ago, only 20% of my class went to industry. But now, I think, if you look at that number in the molecular biology programs, I think we're talking about 45%. And I think professors, faculty members are also recognizing that it's okay to have your postdocs and mentors go into non-academic settings. Back to the incentive model.
And I think, the other question is about philanthropy more generally as it approaches academia. I mean, there's still quite a lot of people who just want to put their name on a building or create a professorship or whatever, which isn't quite as catalytic, I suppose, as some of the things that you're doing in terms of much more, like talking about getting a test developed for Alzheimer's. That's a degree of specificity and market research to come up with that as an area that needs to be tackled. Do you think, what do you see the philanthropy world changing a bit more in that direction besides Gates Ventures, or?
I do think so. And maybe let's take the example of the Silicon Valley billionaires. I think the fact that the money that was made by a lot of those philanthropists was from commercial sector, startups and technology largely. I think that mindset that it's not just a name building, you're going to have to innovate in program areas. One example is the ARC Institute in the Bay Area. The trend is moving in that direction. But that said, philanthropy has a purpose. If you don't have the name building or you don't have the endowed scholarships, it's going to be hard to attract some of the talent that comes in. So hopefully there's a good separation of philanthropists who kind of categorize themselves into the various buckets so all kinds of innovation can thrive.
So Adrian, we talked a bit earlier about, you've introduced this interesting 501c3 structure where you can actually do equity investing for philanthropists that donate, I guess. But I'm interested, what how that's working or what led to that, but also what are the other key innovations that you've introduced in your role?
Very much so. And I think taking a step back, the way we think about innovation is in a very intentional manner. I think just touching on one of the big themes that comes up very often in academia is tech transfer. And it's saying, with our new executive vice president for research, is saying that tech transfer is there to transfer technology. And it's all going back to that incentive of saying, we're not here to maximize the slice of this one pie, but to maximize the number of pies that we create, to use the overused startup analogy. But the other pieces are really intentional, are three other intentional pieces. It's one, it's bringing market feedback upstream into that through partnerships with industry, through partnerships actually with various sources of capital, whether that is intentional philanthropy or risk or equity risk capital, saying this is the area where we're seeing the market go, and this is how we can tell you these are the problems that will have the largest impact to solve. The next part is using capital as an infrastructure layer, and this gets to your final question. And so when we look at those three pieces, right, technology transfer, market feedback, actually 4 incentives, and then capital as infrastructure, we're trying to be intentional about each of those pieces in the broader infrastructure that we build, because we have to enable academia to have that impact. So digging in a little bit deeper on your specific question in terms of how we're thinking about that capital, it's right. So we do a lot of basic research. We need to do a lot of translational research. We now look to partners, and we're also looking internally to how do we enable those various steps. You have organizations like the NIH, the NSF, here in Europe, the Horizon programs, and others enabling the basic research. Then we can turn around and say, okay, well, now we need to get to that next stage of de-risking and getting to the validation of the product that allows us to create the company. And when we start running through venture-like processes, we're starting to see philanthropy do that, running it through investment-like committees, doing pitches, saying, hey, you're not a company yet, but we want to see that you're thinking about what is your path to market, what are your next 3 clinical milestones, what are your next 3 stages of scale-up in climate tech in terms of going from grams to milligrams to grams to kilos to tons. How are you thinking about that and painting out that path? And then internally, what we're trying to do is also be very intentional about bringing that market-validated mindset into how the capital gets allocated. And then the 2 ways we're doing that is on one side using the internal budget to help support some of that. We're calling it actually our One Small Step grant program, which has now created 10 projects, 5 spin-offs, $800,000 in investment to over $20 million in follow-on funding in the past 2 years, really showing that this helps create companies by running them through a venture-like process, and then flipping it around and saying, well, how do we also align incentives between academia as a philanthropic organization and risk capital, where you have to generate that return, and finding ways to blend and allow risk capital, so private investor capital, to participate in the success of that. So bringing them to invest into the earliest stages of venture creation for us. So that's some of the work that we're doing at Rice.
So I really don't know how much time we have left. So what I'm going to do is ask each of you a quick question, final question, and then we'll take questions if there is more time for that. But I want to start with you, actually, Adrian, and I'll ask each of you the same question, which is, you look at the whole innovation system from the big blue sky idea at the start all the way through to this making a positive difference in the world. Is there one thing that if you could change to make the system work better, this would be the thing?
The way I would think about it is, I think it gets back to that whole question of incentives. I have colleagues in the room, and I saw them actually nodding, Bose, as you were saying that. It's, can we think about a way to align incentives? The independence and rigor of academia is a non-negotiable. We need to maintain that to continue doing our research. But with the expectation of society saying that we need to have that impact now, we also need to integrate the changing environment that we're in to make sure that our researchers, our endowment, know that we are aligned with not only maximizing new knowledge generation, but impact of the research and the education that we do.
Yeah, I think in the previous panel I shared that you can break down innovation into 3 cycles: the scientific cycle, the translational cycle, and the scale and adoption cycle. I think if we can shift the needle on hype from science to somewhere in the middle, where you need to show proof and scalability, that could be a game changer.
Great. Sheila.
I think I would love it if we change our focus from process to really impact, right? And when we bring people together to have better measures of real outcomes on the ground.
I'm a big fan of the DARPA model for innovation, and the innovation there per dollar is really through the roof. So before NVIDIA, I was actually working in a company that was replicating the DARPA model, so it was ARPA for health in the US. It was an NGO called Welcome Leap, funded by the Wellcome Trust in the UK, and this is what we did there. And the very, very little administration, really tiny. We were probably 23 people, and we had over almost $1 billion under our direction. We had the programs to accelerate innovation in different verticals. I was leading the one in quantum computing for health, but overall, I think what this type of model of funding has done across the industries that it has been applied is very transformational and kind of very quick timelines, a lot of money, but like fail fast or succeed. This is, I think, the model that will help drive the innovation from an idea to a product.
I know a lot of governments are now talking about setting up similar things to DARPA, and it's that fail fast element that's the key, is it? Yeah. Great. Well, we haven't failed fast. We've hopefully done a good job of doing an excellent high impact outcome. So I'd like to thank the panel for their insight and great. Thank you.